wherever they are, okay, are going to be in the same atmosphere, same gravity, same whatever as Earth. And they're going to develop on their planet the same way we would develop on our planet. So they're going to develop, well, because of their atmosphere, their conditions of their planet, and they're going to evolve from that. They're not going to be like Earthlings.
No, they're not. There are actually, and we can get into this later, Earth-like planets out there, but in a sea of 4 to 8 billion stars, there might be 50 that are similar to this one. But even though they're similar to this one, they're not this one. Okay? If we went to one of those planets, it would be biologically hostile to us. So, but there's inside the Milky Way, there's 50 like planets now. They last time I read last month sometime they identified 8,000 extraterrestrial planets around stars. Okay, they still haven't found an Earth-like one. They think that there's one around Proxima Centauri, but that particular star sends off a great deal of many of X-rays, so they're very iffy about that. And they think that there might be something around in the same system, which is Centauri Alpha or Alpha Centauri, which is actually a twin star. There's two stars orbiting one another, similar to the way Mercury orbits our sun. And they think that there may be something there, like us, okay? But it's still not going to be us. That gravity is going to be a little bit less, or it's going to be a little bit more. If it's a little bit more, we can't go there. If it's a little bit less, it'll be like living at 10 or 20,000 feet on Earth.
Well, like what James has said here recently. Think about the astronauts that are up in the the space whatever. When they come down, their DNA is slightly changed. Am I right, James? And then they have heart problems. They're weak. They can't walk. So it tells us that, to us to adapt on other worlds is going to, I just can't buy that we could do it. What do you think, James?
That you're absolutely right, and that's probably one of the reasons why this John had an avatar. If you think about it, he could communicate with him. He's got an avatar. If we had an avatar, that would be ideal for us to go in space with, if you think about it. But yeah, our DNA breaks down, our bones break down, our muscle breaks down, everything. We're not meant to be in space. We just aren't.
Right. And like I said, well, like Josh explained to me, they're just, this place that we live in is quite precious because there just isn't anything else exactly like it.
For a while, the rate we're going, that's not going to be what we're used to very shortly.
Well, that loudmouth teenager just turned 17 today. I said, happy birthday, she's 17 now. I think that's a little funny because adults don't listen to the teenagers in their own home, and they're all out there listening to this little girl. So,
I don't know. It's scary.
Right. So, to continue, how do I put this? Josh would never use the word alien. Okay? Forget it. And a couple of things you need to know about Josh is he's your basic Class C sociopathic type personality. And what I mean by that is he grew up in a good family, and he was a good guy. But there's certain things about psychopathic and sociopathic personalities that are asymptomatic. And one of those things is you and I go out to defuse a bomb, and the closer we get to that bomb, the faster our hearts beat. Not Josh. The closer that guy got to the bomb, the slower his heart beat. So that's a particularly asymptomatic. So long as he was sober, he wasn't talking too much. All right? And he particularly kept his mouth shut about work. But not to me. As far as I could tell, except for the woman that he married, I was really the only good friend he ever had. Everything else was work-related and dealing with people that are just like him. And one of the things about the human quantum leap, once I get it back out there, I'll make some effort to get it by the end of this month back out there so everyone can have a look at it. It's not a very long book, but when it comes to Josh, he had some of the creepiest stories to share, and I put them in there just for the entertainment value. All right, just so the world would understand the type of person we were dealing with, or what we're dealing with.
Now, can you AJ? Can you tell us any of the creepy stories, or a little bit about it?
Boy, we're going. It's 40 years this year. This summer, it's 40 years since Josh and I first crossed paths this summer. So it's a little vague. I actually have to look this stuff up in my own book. But the one that sticks out is he lived in after his unit was disbanded. He lived in barracks in Washington D.C. and worked out of the Pentagon for all his dispatches originally. And one of the ones that just stuck out in my mind all this time was apparently he was sitting around in his office, and the sergeant major came in, and he said, "I'm sending you down to an Army base down Texas way. They're missing a couple of tanks." Okay? And so Josh very reasonably looked up at his sergeant major and said, "Sergeant Major, I'm a Marine. Why do I care what the Army does with their tanks?" To which the sergeant major said, "We just get our orders and we go follow them orders." Okay? So off, Josh grabs his gear, puts it over his back, goes out to the Air Force Base, uses his ID to hop on a transport, and the very next day he's down in Texas, somewhere near the border, and somebody is going on yada, yada, yada about how two M60 tanks went missing. And the tracks went over the Mexican border. So there's a couple of Mexicans came in with too much tequila and went off with a couple of tanks, right? That's what Josh and his partner were thinking. So luckily there were these tracks, but then it also made sense why he was being sent, because it's across the border. Because the only people allowed to cross international borders as federal agents during peacetime are Marines, and so that's why it made more sense to him, because those tanks are on the other side of the border, and there was, "All right, you guys are Marines, you go get our tanks back." And basically that's what happened. I mean, they jumped in into probably it was still Jeeps. They didn't have Hummers yet. They didn't have Hummers until 85, 86. So and crossed the border, and sure enough, within 3 hours of rough terrain, they found those tanks. Okay, and the hair went up on the back, as he tells it, on the back of his neck. Josh said, as soon as they pulled up on those tanks. he felt something creepy going up and down his skin like he had never felt before, and he thought he was in serious danger. Okay, so he had his M16 and his 45 sidearm, and the guy with him had the same, and they started approaching these tanks real slow. Neither of them spoke Spanish. And then what looked like men popped their heads up out of the driver's seats, which is a hatch. The hatches were already open, apparently, as they approached. They popped their heads up, and they saw Josh and his buddy. And those two supposed people leaped. I mean, they, like Jedi Knights, they just leaped right out of those hatches and right down onto the ground. They said, Josh goes, they look like a couple of dwarfs, and they were walking like gorillas, okay? And they were stomping around. They looked completely human dwarfs, and they were stomping around, and their fists were on the ground. They were mumbling back and forth to one another in some kind of language. They were clearly agitated and angry, okay? And one of them leaped up into the air right at the two Marines, and Josh didn't hesitate. He dropped the hammer on his M16 before that creepy thing made it to the ground. He said the damn thing had to have leaped at least 80 feet in that first effort, and he just opened up on that thing. And he said he put at least a dozen rounds in it, and he was clearly hurt when it finally reached the ground because it started backing off. But he didn't phase that. Whatever that was, it wasn't phased, okay? And then they started hearing some more of the same weird noises that these two guys are talking back and forth to one another with, okay? Except they were off at a distance, and they were a lot louder, all right? And so there were quite a few more of these creepers out there. And so as soon as those two heard those noises, including the guy filled with a dozen 5.6 rounds, they just started leaping and running and leaping, and they went off into the distance, and they disappeared. It was like a couple of human gorillas, and all Josh could do is look at the other Marine like, what the hell is that?
I'd be freaked out.
Right. So, and that's just an example of one of his really creepy stories. It kind of sticks with you. I mean, who the hell could come up with something like that?
Well, and that's yeah, that is really interesting. Now, hey, James has a couple questions to ask you. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I'm curious. The John was an avatar, so where was he made, or what planet, or what place was he from? The original one.
I had asked. I had asked dozens and dozens of questions of Josh that never got answered. Okay, and we had this kind of process. All right, we would get together, and when we got together, it was holidays. It was like family time and relaxing time and drinking time for Josh because he didn't drink the rest of the time. And our process. Well, let me put it to you, it was his process, okay? I was in the process, but I wasn't in charge of the process, okay? Getting stuff out of Josh was like, pulling teeth on an elephant, all right? And so the process went something like this. He would get inebriated, and I would ask him a question. If he had the answer, he would tell me, all right? If he didn't have the answer, he would just shrug his shoulders. But the next time we went back into this process again, okay, it would be like I had just asked that original question because he would go, oh, by the way, you remember when you asked me yada, 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 about yada, yada? And he would be talking about something that happened, 9, 10, 12 months before, like it was yesterday.